Hey there. So I'm wondering, are you praised for being high achieving, reliable, on top of it all, and you kind of love that praise, but secretly you're feeling anxious, exhausted, and like your success is built on gripping for control? Like the minute that you loosen that control, you may just lose it all? Good news. You are not alone, and there's certainly not something wrong with you. You're likely in survival mode, and you do not have to stay there. In this episode, I'm pulling back the curtain on a pattern that I see in many high-performing women, including myself, how control gives us a false sense of accomplishment. And success becomes the armor that we wear to feel safe in a world that told us that we had to earn our worth, that something outside of us dictates how worthy we are. So if you've ever felt like your ambition is quietly driven by anxiety and this need to make sure that you have control over everything going on in your life, this episode is absolutely for you. Welcome to the Untamed Divine, the podcast helping 6- and 7-figure female leaders understand how chasing success is causing anxiety and self-doubt, and how awakening your divine feminine energy will reignite flow, abundance, and ease, making you feel excited about life again. I'm your host, Hannah O'Donovan, former overachiever to prove my worth kind of gal turned channel, nervous system specialist, and activator of the untamed divine feminine. Let's get into it. In this episode, you'll discover how control becomes a survival strategy for high-achieving women, and it starts in childhood, especially from a place of safety, approval, or love once being conditional. The connection between perfectionism, nervous system dysregulation, and the need to stay on top of everything. And finally, a more sustainable, nourishing path to success rooted in trust, divine feminine energy, and body-based safety. So where did this control equals safety pattern start? Well, where most things started, your childhood. When your childhood experiences included unpredictability, chaos, or emotional neglect, that led to you finding safety in being good, successful, and useful. And I will say this as someone who grew up in a loving, generally stable household. I did not come from any sort of big T trauma. I had very supportive parents who were there for me, but even in a stable and loving home, there is still unpredictability. And also, as much as parents try, they can't protect you from all the challenges or conditioning in the world. You still go out there to school and interact with other people, and you learn things that aren't necessarily great for our evolution as humans. So regardless of your circumstances, it is highly, highly likely that there was an element of unpredictability, chaos, or understanding, conditioning that safety was found in being a good girl, in achieving in external validation, and in being useful and contributing. And so how does that transfer into a need for control being about safety? Well, when things feel predictable, we reduce uncertainty, we feel safer. But this can then seep into areas of our lives without us noticing. It goes beyond just this sort of, oh, if I'm good, I'll be safe. If I'm successful, I'll be safe. If I'm useful, I'll be safe. And control starts to become a lack of trust in anyone else being able to do it right. It becomes this kind of cycle, right? Where you at some point in your life understood, likely subconsciously, but maybe consciously, that if you are a good girl, if you follow the rules, you mind your manners, you don't say anything out of line, you don't get too emotional, too big, if you achieve, like for me, it was absolutely achieving in school. I got a lot of praise from teachers, from fellow students, from my parents and my wider family because I got really good grades. And to me, that became a pattern of like, well, I need to keep getting really good grades to keep getting this praise that feels good. And so this cycle of, okay, if I keep doing this thing, then I will get the predictable, safe feeling that I am going to be praised, worthy, accepted, then it keeps feeding into this new loop. And these loops then kind of like up the ante almost in a way that it's like, okay, if something is feeling unpredictable in my life, even when I am following this model of being good, being successful, being useful, but that uncertainty is starting to weigh on my nervous system. I'm getting anxious. I feel like things are out of my control. Well, then I double down. I dig my heels in and I get more controlling. Well, then I see the outcome of things being or feeling more safe. Okay, then great. That is evidence to my mind that the more I control, the more I feel safe, the more I should control. You see how it can be that like self-fulfilling cycle? It starts from this conditioning when we are younger. This idea that if we are in a space where we're facing unpredictability, chaos, or emotional neglect, then we sought out safety and being good, successful, and useful. And then it was mirrored back to us that that was actually a good strategy because it felt more safe. And then therefore we kept reinforcing that pattern, but maybe higher stakes each time around as we got older and things started to seem even more unpredictable around us. And so how does success specifically become a way to be in control of outcomes, of emotions, of how other people perceive you? Well, what's really at the core of this is that many high-performing women grow up learning that achievement equals approval. Like I said, I got good grades. I got approval from my teachers, from my family, from my friends. So success becomes more than a goal. It becomes a way to earn love, to earn worth, and to earn belonging. And these are all core things that as human beings we want. We want to connect with others around us. We want others to pay attention to us. We want to feel loved by others. So therefore, if I am seeing that good grades get me attention, get me love, and get me praise, then I want more of that. So subconsciously, success then starts to become control over how others see us, how we feel about ourselves, and also whether we even deserve to take up space. I am being conditioned that the better I do in school, the more space I deserve to take up, and therefore the better I need to do in school to keep being able to take up that space. So this kind of shifts into this like high functioning, but sort of hollow way of keeping us running through external validation, but never truly feeling fulfilled and becoming a little addicted to this ability to control unpredictability in our lives and feel safe. Once again, we're getting fed this belief that the more I control in my life, the better I can do at things, the more I can control other people's perceptions of me, the more safe I'm going to feel and the less out of control life is going to feel. And that is good. So let's keep doing it. Let's keep controlling everything around us and everyone's perception of us, and we'll be good. And to be clear, this idea of control, of like gripping onto control in our life, it doesn't always look like being super rigid and needing to like be in charge all the time, but it can also look like high standards, people pleasing, or hyper productivity. This idea that like, okay, if I just keep producing stuff, I control how much I'm outputting, the better. But this mental load of trying to anticipate everyone's needs before they're even spoken, like assuming, being hyper vigilant, assuming what everyone else needs, likely in order for you to feel safe and continue to like maintain their approval, that's exhausting. That is why this like false facade of control feels like perhaps you are high functioning, like you are taking care of shit, you are getting everything done, no need to worry, Hannah's got that, like she's always on top of things, but it feels hollow inside. And you're like, wait a second, people are praising me for being so in control, for being so on top of things, but it doesn't feel good anymore. I'm depleted, I'm exhausted, but the only way I know how to keep getting the baseline of safety that I want is to keep being in control of everything, to keep having these super high standards, to keep ensuring that I am meeting my people pleasing and hyper productivity states. And there's no better example of this than my sister. My sister's been on the podcast a couple of times and we've touched on this in different ways, but my sister was the ultimate control freak. Honestly, I say that with love, but the ultimate control freak. My family can be very emotional, and we didn't know it growing up, but there was a lot of dysregulation happening due to undiagnosed neurodivergence in the family. And as a sort of coping mechanism with this like unpredictable emotional landscape that my sister was navigating, she became hyper independent and, really held on to control in her life as she got older, as she moved like really like late teens into her adulthood. And from the outside, even as her sister, who was pretty close to her at the time, it looked like, she just has really high standards. She's hyper productive. She's got everything. Like I had this very real story in my head that like my sister had it all together and that I was like barely holding on. I was organized and I was getting shit done for sure. And I'm sure probably other people looked at me and thought, wow, Hannah's really on top of things. But my internal story was like, oh my God, this is a mess. I'm exhausted. How am I keeping up with this? I don't want to do this. I don't always want to be on top of everything. And so I'm looking at my sister of this example of someone who's just like, that is who she is. She is always the one making the plans in the group chat. She is always the one who is on top of organizing the vacation. She can do everything alone. She doesn't need a lot of help. And I share this example because it's such a good example of how this control addiction can be disguised as things that we really praise in society. We praise someone having high standards. We praise someone being hyper productive and hyper organized, always on top of things. In fact, we let those people continue to be like that because it benefits us. It benefits me that my sister was organizing all of the vacations, that she was always on top of things, that benefited me. And so I didn't look deeper at why maybe she was doing this. What was the like deeper reasoning why she felt she always needed to be the one on top of things and taking charge and taking the lead. And it wasn't until more recently where there was sort of like a pressure cooker explosion of like, oh my God, like I actually can't keep up with this grip of control that I have on life anymore. And it started to slowly unravel. And she started to realize that control had become a survival strategy for her. As much as it had become a survival strategy for me, it manifested in different ways. Hers was maybe more intense and mine went a different route, but we were both controlling our lives to feel safe because it was a survival strategy for us. It was a way for us to feel safe, to continue to get the approval that we had become so accustomed to receiving, and to keep receiving the love that we believed was conditional on how well we stayed on top of everything, how well we kept producing. So this illusion of control, because that is what it is at the end of the day. There's no such thing as true control in life. Life is unpredictable. That is like one of the most predictable things about life is that it is unpredictable. So control is an illusion. The idea that you can control your everyday, your relationships, what's going to happen at work or with your family or with anything going on around you, that is an illusion. It's not real. And it really connects to this nervous system dysregulation, because if your peace, if your feeling of safety and anchoredness in this world depends on everything going right, that's not peace. That is in fact control. So learning how to remain anchored in uncertainty, that's really where you want to be. You want to be able to understand that you don't have control, that life is at its core uncertain. So how are you able to remain anchored within yourself in that uncertainty? How are you able to not constantly live in this fight or flight mode while appearing together and instead actually be in a space where your nervous system goes, okay, we can handle unpredictability. We don't have to control everything within an inch of its life in order to feel safe. We can figure out how to feel safe in the uncertainty. Because if you are in this space where I can only have peace if everything is going right, your body never truly gets a rest because there's always something to manage or to fix. That list will be never ending. I don't know about you, but I've certainly been in those seasons of life where I'm like, if I just get through these next 2 weeks, it's going to slow down. It'll be great. Or if I just do these 5 things on my to-do list, then I can take a break. But if I'm not actually addressing the underlying need to move through these things, to have control over these next 2 weeks or these next 5 things, then when I get to the end of that to-do list or the end of those 2 weeks, my system is still going to be in this fight or flight mode where it needs to be doing something, fixing something, managing something, controlling something in order to feel safe. And that's how chronic control leads us to anxiety, to resentment, and to disconnection from self, which I talk about this often. To me, is the crux of all of this. When we self-abandon, when we become disconnected from ourselves, that is where we start to lose this ability to see and be in the eye of the storm. Actually, my therapist was saying this to me the other day, and I think it was a really good analogy for this. You want to be in the eye of the storm. So you want to be in that clear, calm energy that is in the center of the storm. The life is the storm. And while we don't always want to be looking at life as this storm, because that can get us into this kind of negative mindset, when we accept that life is a little chaotic, that it can be disappointing, unpredictable, and it's likely not going to work out exactly the way that we thought or hoped that it would work out, when we can see that and allow that to kind of swirl around us, while maintaining our anchored position in the center of the storm. So we're not getting pulled into the storm. We're not getting whipped up by the wind. We're not in there with all of the debris. We can see the debris. We can respect that that is the truth of what is happening, but we are in that center. When you are in that center, when you are in that eye of the storm, when you are able to anchor in that place and not get drawn in, you are connected more to yourself. When we're getting drawn into that storm, that's when we're disconnected from ourselves. That's when we're self-abandoning. And again, like, it can happen. This was the season I recently went through when I was getting like pulled in all directions, being like, oh my God, everything is crazy. And like everywhere I turn, it's bad news. Like, what is going on? And it has taken me time, and it is taking me really reconnecting with myself to come back to that center and be like, okay, yes, this is a reality of life. Things are unpredictable and there is bad news. And I don't have to be in that bad news all of the time. So understanding that when the nervous system is attuned to the fact that the only way to feel safe is for things to be predictable and therefore to be in control of everything, because there's not a reality in which we live in as humans where everything is predictable without this like illusion of control. So what really needs to happen is that we have to attune our nervous system to a new definition of feeling safe. And that is, how do I stay in the eye of the storm? How do I remain anchored in the uncertainty that's swirling around me? And this is where I believe that the divine feminine shift comes in. It's this idea of moving from control to trust. So divine feminine energy, it invites you into this softness, this surrender, this collaboration, and most importantly, faith in your inner wisdom. And I mentioned at the top of this episode that what control turns into is this lack of trust in anyone else but yourself being able to do it right. And I believe that that lack of trust actually stems from a lack of trust in yourself, which then manifests as a lack of trust in others. Because if you've abandoned your own inner wisdom, if you no longer have faith in your center, in what you believe to be true, then how are you going to have faith and trust in others? Everything stems from the belief systems within, right? From how much we believe in ourselves. What are we judging or criticizing about ourselves, and therefore likely criticizing about others around us? Like when they say other people are mirrors of our own internal experience, it is very true. So if you don't trust yourself, if you don't listen to and follow your own inner wisdom, then you are not going to be able to have faith in others. And therefore, that need for control is going to replace that trust in self and trust in others. So when we allow ourselves to shift into this sense of surrender, this sense of collaboration and personal self-trust, we are able to start to release that grip on control. And this never means that you need to abandon ambition. In fact, I will say that my ambition increased when I stepped into my divine feminine surrender. It amplified because I was able to find the space to say, oh, I don't have to do this in a way that really didn't feel good. Because that's sometimes the mind fuck, right? That it's like, well, if my nervous system is attuned to safety and safety means control, like, isn't that a good thing? Well, no, the nervous system attunes to familiarity, not necessarily what is best for you. And so if it is familiar with feeling safe through reducing unpredictability by controlling everything, then that is what it's going to continue to do. But when I started to take a step back and go, okay, well, I don't necessarily need to control this. And it happened in like the micro moments in my life, by the way. I didn't like wake up one day and was like, okay, I'm just going to surrender and trust. And then all of a sudden I surrendered and trusted. No, like surrender was such a foreign concept to me at that time that like my mind kept tricking me into being like, this actually doesn't really exist because I don't even know how to define it because I am so unfamiliar with what surrender actually looks like because my survival strategy has been control. I couldn't even like define it in my head. It was such a like ambiguous concept that I couldn't grasp. So instead of trying to like take this like big leap into surrender, I did it in these like little micro instances in my life. So for example, I'm in the group chat, someone's planning something. I don't really love where this is going, or I can see, because I have pretty intense pattern recognition, the road down which this is going. They're picking, I don't know, a cottage to go away to for the summer or a restaurant. And I'm like, I don't like that. I don't want to go there. I don't blah, blah, blah. Instead of jumping in and being like, actually, I think we should do it this way and here, and let's do that. And I'm blah, 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 and here's blah, blah, blah. No, instead I'm just like, cool. Someone else is taking the lead. I don't have to do it. That's awesome. Let it go. Or one of my favorite examples of this is with my partner. When we started dating, he loves to experiment in the kitchen. Like he'll just all of a sudden have this idea and he'll be like, I think I'm gonna batter the asparagus tonight. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I feel inspired. Or, I'm going to do this with the broccoli. And my brain's like, that's not going to fucking work. This is going to be a disaster. It's not going to end well. Like, that's how I feel. Or I predict this is going to come out. And I want to be like, well, are you sure you want to do that? Like, maybe we could do it like this. Is that an experiment we really want to do with our dinner tonight? And I would stop myself, literally just pause in the moment and go, cool, love, fucking take it away. I'm excited to see what happens. Because who cares if the broccoli doesn't turn out right? Who cares if this battered asparagus experiment is a disaster? What's actually more fun is that my partner is excited and inspired and being creative, and that I'm supporting him in being creative. So it was these little moments where my nervous system would be like, no, stop this. This is not going to end well. Or, oh, I can see where this is going and I don't like it. So insert yourself in there and take over. This happens at work a lot. At the beginning, it was very much like my instinct was be like, yep, I'll take that on. Yeah, no worries. I'll get that done. Oh, no, I'll do that. But instead of jumping in and saying, oh, yeah, I'll do that. Don't worry, because I know you won't do it the way that I do it. I would just pause and hold space for the discomfort I feel for not jumping in. And then slowly that became easier and easier. And now I do it kind of automatically. Like yesterday, I was chatting with someone, a client of mine on the project management work that I do. And I was like, about to be like, you know what? I think we need to set up a meeting and get all these people in one room to do blah, 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 blah. And I was like, nope, I don't need to do that actually right now. And I stopped. I deleted the message and I walked away. And it was totally fine. Once I started like leaning into this surrender more, once I had these like micro moments in my day where I was noticing this like knee-jerk reaction of wanting to control things and actually giving myself space, not jumping in, and then soothing my nervous system as I needed to when it felt uncomfortable with the fact that I was not in control, I got way more space to understand that I could be ambitious, I could be successful, I could build my business and my life in a way that was rooted in truth of what I wanted, not what I thought I wanted based on what external factors told me. And it became this really exciting thing that I was like, oh my gosh, wow, I could take this shit way further than I thought, because I'm not trying to build a model off of something that my system, my body is like, no, this is misaligned. Because even if we don't realize it consciously, our body is constantly being like, nope, that's not for you. Nope, that's misaligned. And when that feeling comes through, conscious or subconscious, then we meet resistance. And when we meet resistance, we're like, ugh, I don't want to do it this way. Even though we're like tip tapping away and doing our thing and like, yeah, let's go. But that resistance builds and builds and builds till you hit a wall, whether that wall comes in a few months or a few years, and you go, no, I want to burn this all to the ground because I built it based on this need for control, this need to feel safe through reducing unpredictability, instead of leaning into, okay, how am I anchored in the eye of the storm, knowing that things are going to be uncertain and unpredictable, and how am I going to allow my ambition to be rooted in truth, alignment, and not a response to needing approval, which then in turn makes me feel safe. So when you start to be in this like state of divine feminine surrender and collaboration and faith in your inner wisdom, that opens up the door for you to actually start receiving support, pleasure, and ease without this like hustle mentality, without this need to hustle. And then these co-nourishing relationships that you build along the way, because you're not always trying to control everything and take it all on yourself, teach you that surrender has its benefits, which then in itself becomes this reinforcing cycle, right? Talking at the start about this reinforcing cycle of like, okay, I notice that I found safety in being good and being successful and being useful. And then therefore, when things felt predictable and I reduced uncertainty, I felt even safer. So then this control creeps in. That's one cycle, but that cycle works the other way too. When you start to teach yourself through these micro moments of surrender, that greater surrender has really beautiful benefits, then your brain's like, wait a second. Okay, I can actually find safety in trusting myself. I can find safety in understanding that there isn't predictability, but that I won't collapse because of that. And then that cycle becomes this beautiful cycle of reinforcement for you, right? So first and foremost, it's important to develop that awareness. Where did this control equals safety pattern come from? Why has success become a way to be in control of outcomes, of emotions, of how others perceive you? And understanding that this high functioning but hollow way of being doesn't always look like control is rigidity, but it can be disguised as high standards, people pleasing, hyperproductivity, something that other people will really praise in you because it benefits them, which reinforces your need to stay like that. And so coming to this understanding that, oh, my nervous system is not feeling safe when things feel unpredictable. And so therefore this control reaction kicks in. How do I shift myself out of this fight flight mode that has served me for however long in my life, but is no longer serving me, and allow yourself to reconnect with the part of you that does trust, that does believe that while the world around you might feel unpredictable, you can be anchored in the eye of the storm. And it's through this divine feminine shift towards softness, towards surrender, towards collaboration, and most importantly, faith in your inner wisdom, that you will then be able to develop more faith in others and feel less like control equals safety. Through the micro moments in your day where you can pause and not control the outcome, not control the situation, and then therefore allow yourself to witness, okay, my nervous system feels a little dysregulated right now because I'm not jumping in to fix this. And how can I soothe myself in the moment to then reinforce this loop that surrender has so many beautiful benefits. One of which is your ambition actually may grow into this big, beautiful new thing because it's rooted in truth and not your response to needing approval anymore. So I hope that this loving call out of the part of you that feels like she can only be safe as she stays in control allowed you to see that your deepest power is not in holding everything together, not in always being the person who is hyperproductive and people pleasing and in control, but actually in learning how to let go and trust yourself, your body, your life, and others again. You can amplify that ambition. You can amplify that success. Thank you so much for listening and continuing to trust that your deepest desires are inevitable and you deserve to be turned on by your life. It's a fucking myth that we just have to suffer through. Desire over duty, always, baby. New episodes are released every Wednesday and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. I will see you there. Are you still stuck in the cycle of overdrive and feeling anxious even after trying things like meditating, journaling, and even resting? These tools only work at the level of the mind and can't create the safety your body is craving when your nervous system is dysregulated. That's where the return journey comes in. A free 5-day audio experience designed to help high-achieving women like you finally regulate your nervous system, awaken your divine feminine energy, and reconnect with the part of you that leads with flow, not force, no matter what's happening around you. In less than 15 minutes a day, you'll feel more grounded, empowered, and emotionally agile by this time next week. Find the link in the show notes.